I don't want to spend too much time recapping or responding to comments on my last video, but I do want to make a few points. My commentary on how arguments are made in order to rally support behind Biden, specifically the hostility, the shaming, and lack of actual convincing that's happening, was intended to point out the ineffective nature of these conversations, to encourage Biden supporters to move towards more productive ones. The response to that video was, in large part, these exact kinds of conversations I specifically said would be unconvincing to progressive voters who plan to vote third party. And all I'm going to say on that is, look, if you actually want to convince people to vote for Biden, I suggest you stop attacking people and actually convince them. If your goal is not to convince people to vote for Biden, but rather to attack progressive voters, go for it. I'm used to it. But to those who actually attempted to have a productive conversation or who DM'd me, thank you. People who responded to my video, whether they planned on voting for Biden or not, agreed on a few fundamental issues. 1, that the two-party system is flawed. 2, that we would be better off with ranked choice or approval voting. And 3, that we need to act more locally if we actually want to get progressive policy passed. Even the progressives that were insistently backing Biden weren't doing so because they were enthusiastic supporters of his. They were generally worried about the spoiler effect. Even before there was a clear Democratic nominee, there were certain candidates that I just adamantly refused to vote for, such as Biden or Bloomberg, who I felt would not represent my interests and therefore did not want to have to vote for if I did not have to. And because of the spoiler effect, moderate Democrats and progressive voters alike are criticizing anyone who wants to vote third party. But in the context of my vote specifically, I am confident I will not split the Democratic vote, and here's why. I live in Massachusetts, which is a solidly blue state. In 2012, over 60% of the vote went to Obama and only 37.5% went to Romney, leaving only 1.84% of the vote to third party. And in 2016, almost 61% of the vote went to Hillary and around 33.3% of the vote went to Trump. Third-party votes increased to 5.68% of voters, but that didn't take away from Hillary. Actually, she had more support than Obama, and Trump saw a drop in support by almost 4%. I'm willing to bet the chances of progressive voters splitting the vote in Massachusetts are slim to none. But there are benefits to voting third party even if it doesn't get the candidate the presidency. And in my specific state, it's almost guaranteed that Biden will get all of the electoral votes. And no, it's not the only thing I could be doing. Like many people have said, we should act locally. We need to start from the ground up if we want to get some policy changes in place, if we want to see ranked choice or approval voting in place. Although often that was brought up not in good faith, but rather as a ha, gotcha, as in they assume that anyone who wants to vote third party is only thinking nationally and not locally, and therefore isn't active in their local communities, which these people know nothing about me, and if they did, they know that's not true about me, and I'd bring that back to if you actually want to convince people to vote for Biden, you should focus on that instead of attacking people, but I digress. On the topic of ranked choice voting, that is literally question 2 on the Massachusetts ballot. So we did act locally, we got it recognized. For anyone in Massachusetts, please vote yes on question 2 in November. For the love of God, I am begging you. And if you're the kind of voter that only really cares about the presidential elections and doesn't really follow your local or state ones, please start doing that. So to tie this back in with my decision to vote third party, I am in agreement with all of these things that progressive voters who are supporting Biden have told me that I should be doing. And while no, I don't think a third party candidate has any real chance of being elected president, voting third party still has its benefits. It's a small way to step away from the two-party system and try and get a third party recognized. And in my particular case, without any real fear of splitting the vote in Trump's favor. Because, if it wasn't already clear, my primary goal right now is to step away from the two-party system that got us here, including the Democrats. Both parties have contributed to the conditions that we are currently seeing right now. Both parties have contributed to concentrating power into the hands of an oligarchy. I do not want to operate within them if I do not have to. To the extent that, as a Bernie supporter myself, right now, if he got the Democratic nomination, I might still be considering voting third party. Because he would probably win my state either way, and I still want to move away from the two-party system. And yes, unfortunately, our president is going to be either Trump or Biden for the next 4 years, and I realize that. But if I'm thinking and acting locally, if I'm taking other steps to try and get third-party candidates recognized and move away from the two-party system, especially if there's no real risk of splitting the vote in my state and all the electoral votes are going to go to Biden anyway, I don't really see any risk in voting third party myself, much less think that it warrants all this hostility.